We are anonymous. We are everywhere. We are legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
The general population knows and don't know they know. They are used as an experiment continuously. You are awake, and you know who the enemy is. The enemy of humanity, belief of our world.
You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change.
But I wrestle with depression. Love to get in and get a fucking shotgun, blow my fucking head off.
I've had a few incidences where I've had suicidal thoughts. I've stood on that ledge a few times.
These devices are supposed to be learning as you go, just like Google.
Is this the moment in our society when we lose the connection to what it means to be a human?
My name is Ryan Endicott. I'm a disabled Marine Corps veteran who struggles with post-traumatic stress and traumatic brain injury after having been deployed to the war in Iraq in 2005. When I came home in 2008, an epidemic of suicides was shaking the veteran community. Over 60,000 veterans took their own lives between then and 2017. But rather than tackling the problem head on, the Department of Defense had another plan: the development of microchips that would be implanted directly into veterans' brains to control our emotions. With more than 20 veteran suicides still happening every single day, I decided to go on a mission to find out more about these chips, including their connections to the big tech industry, and to speak with other veterans just like myself about whether they would use this chip and if there's a better way to address our trauma. Matthew Ho is someone like me who served in Iraq and also Afghanistan, first with the Marine Corps and later with the State Department.
I don't even know if I knew that in spring of 2005 that was called PTSD. I had no idea. So I just drank, and ignored it. And my symptoms at that time were like the hypervigilance. I didn't like my back not being to the door. I couldn't look people in the face. I was always scanning the room. But I didn't recognize that really of myself unless there was an extreme occurrence.
Post-traumatic stress is characterized by everything from intense feelings of distress when reminded of a tragic event, to flashbacks, nightmares, and feeling emotionally numb. It's estimated that 2.2 million veterans in the US are currently dealing with post-traumatic stress. Doug Ryder is a veteran of the US war in Vietnam, which ended in 1975. Even though it's now been more than 4 decades, his battle with trauma has lasted his entire adult life.
It took a long time for me to get sober. I mean, I couldn't stop drinking. I had trouble sleeping, was depressed. And then finally in '87, I stopped drinking after going to AA for about 18 years.
When I first came home, it was like, here I am, I'm home. But my family didn't see that because the Ryan that marched off to that war never came home and never will come home. And your family is sort of still expecting that person. They're waiting for that person to come home, but that person is never coming home because that person died in the war.
For Doug and Matthew, just like myself, the suicide epidemic has hit close to home. Personally, I stopped counting the number of friends who had killed themselves at 20 because I just couldn't bear the burden anymore.
And I've cleaned the brains and the skull and the blood of my radio operator off the inside of his car, or tried to, because it was impossible to do. He put a shotgun in his mouth and blew it back, and this kid was my radio operator.
My friend Jim B. gets depressed, locks himself in the bathroom, and unloads with a shotgun. His wife Jean has to find him and deal with that.
So what has been the response of the US government to this crisis? The Department of Veterans Affairs, or VA, is supposed to be the lifeline for those of us returning home from war. They run a network of federally funded hospitals across the country. Dr. Margaret Flowers is a pediatrician who advocates for universal health care.
So the VA is actually one part of our healthcare system that potentially could work very well. It's a model of being a completely socialized type of healthcare system that's not about profit, not supposed to be about profit, but it has a lot of weaknesses right now. I mean, basically the United States is not funding it properly. There's, millions, I understand more than 10 million veterans or people served in the military who don't have access.
Kevin Zeese is a social justice attorney who has worked extensively with the group Veterans for Peace.
We are constantly creating new veterans with new health problems, but not providing the funding needed to confront it. And the issue of suicide is one that Pentagon doesn't want to even admit to. And so that's a whole nother challenge, is to get the government to face up to the realities.
In 2019, it was reported that 9 veterans committed suicide in the parking lots of VA hospitals after being denied services over a year-long period. In 2018, the VA was found to have only spent $57,000 on suicide prevention in the first 9 months of the year, out of a total suicide prevention budget of $6 million. And the VA has come under fire for intentionally misdiagnosing PTSD in order to cut costs. Even getting the minimum of benefits we are supposed to be entitled to often seems impossible.
And so being disabled and then getting out of the military and not being able to get your benefits means you have no health care. It means you have no disability package. It means you have no education benefits. It means all of the benefits that we went and fought in war for are completely inaccessible. In fact, my VA ID here, I went in to get it in 2008, and I didn't receive this ID until 2015.
But like I said, when we got home, we weren't checked for a traumatic brain injury. We went to a bunch of classes. We were told, hey, don't drink, don't beat your wife. If you're having problems, go talk to somebody. And then that was it. And so what we all did, we all went right out and drank, because that was the only way that we had for dealing with it.
With neglect of veterans a daily reality, it's been the Department of Defense, sometimes called the Pentagon, that has pushed for solutions involving artificial intelligence.
And the BRAIN Initiative will change that by giving scientists the tools they need to get a dynamic picture of the brain in action and better understand how we think and how we learn and how we remember.
The Brain Chip program was part of President Obama's BRAIN Initiative, which he announced in 2014. $26 million in funding for the chip was dished out to research centers across the country by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Project Association, which is the research arm of the Department of Defense. DARPA declined our requests for an interview, but one of the handful of scientists who've been working at the program for the past 5 years did agree to speak with us.
My research involves looking at different brain stimulation techniques to cure psychiatric disorders. And I'm really passionate about making a change in the lives of people who have been affected by such disorders and how we can help them, function properly in their day-to-day lives.
But are there possible ethical concerns of putting a chip in the brains of veterans, or anyone for that matter?
We have ethical concerns regarding anything that relates to an implanted device in a brain. So yeah, but that's not where I work. I'm sure there are experts in that area who will figure out if it's ethical to do it or not. But also if it's like not in, I think if it's outside the realm of research and it's like a real device, it goes through FDA approval and everything, and I'm sure it's like a procedure before they actually approve a device to be implanted.
Dr. Basu may find comfort in knowing that the Food and Drug Administration, an arm of the US government, would have to approve the brain chips before they are widely implanted. But others aren't so convinced. Elisa Elkin-Cleary is a psychotherapist who advocates a holistic model for dealing with trauma.
It's a very covert message that they're sending in terms of, you are so broken, we must use a medical model to insert into your brain to make a change. Not unlike the way certain medications are given to people, whereas there's like no hope of you actually completely healing. We just have to manage the symptoms.
So coming up with a kind of a technological solution to a manufactured situation, to me, it's really unethical. It's, are they now saying that, oh, well, we can put people out into these situations because we can trick their brain into, not experiencing it as a traumatic situation? To me, that goes against what it means to be human.
The implanting of chips in the brains of veterans also brings with it potential legal ramifications.
I think the legal implications of something like brain chips is totally unknown. This is would be a new area of law, a new way of the government intruding into people's personal bodies. We don't know what that's going to do to people. And if someone is brain chipped and then commits crime or violence, who's responsible? Is it the brain chip, or is it the person suffering post-traumatic stress?
If someone with one of these devices was to kill someone, would the company that had implanted this device be legally responsible, or would the individual? What do you think that there's a legal implication here that can start to get gray?
I mean, I think when we are implanting a device, it's not necessarily changing, a person's values or personality. So I actually don't know, I don't know the legal side of things. I mean, I've never thought about it like that, if somebody with a device kills someone.
So what do veterans with post-traumatic stress think about the possibility of having a chip implanted in their brain?
So just to look at the body with regards to, I'll just change some of the circuitry. I mean, I think that's, I'm not going to trust my government to be messing with my circuit. I got enough trouble with my circuits, Why are we pulling men and women out of the river when we're not going downstream, seeing why they're falling in?
Well, I go back to who's the one who's funding it, right? It's funded by DARPA, which is the Defense Department's research and development arm. And I don't believe the purposes of it are to help veterans, but I think the purposes are to allow soldiers to keep fighting without experiencing emotions. And if you have these guys just existing in their most basic being, in their most reptilian way, where they don't feel, they don't have a conscience, they just know what to do to survive, then they will be super soldiers. And I think that's the ultimate purpose of this type of microchip in the brain.
DARPA is bringing the concept of super soldiers closer than ever to becoming a reality. In 2018, it was announced that the agency would spend $12 million working towards enhancing troops of tomorrow. Part of the program is aimed at creating software to be uploaded directly to the brain. The effect? To overcome everything from blindness to speech disorders, as well as limiting the amount of sleep a person would need. Combating fatigue so the soldier can simply focus on fighting. There has been some concern around the potential of utilizing these chips in soldiers preemptively. Do you think there's a very real potential of using the stimulant in that way?
I haven't thought about that, but I think there might be ethical concerns there. Like, I don't feel like using things when it's not required. Maybe it would be required. I would be more inclined towards actually like screening people maybe to see who is more likely to develop, trauma-related situations. I mean, some people are predisposed to being affected by trauma more than others.
But let's assume the chip technology doesn't go quite that far and simply helps level a person's emotions. One of my concerns is how a chip could possibly understand every scenario a person might find themselves in, as well as how it could meaningfully address trauma.
What we don't know yet is how emotion really crosses different sections of the brain, and that a brain chip isn't going to be able to address really how trauma is organized in the brain. And the brain is also very malleable, so each person is going to have differences.
These devices are supposed to be learning as you go, just like Google. Like if you, type in keywords and then later it will actually kind of suggest you that, oh, maybe you are looking for this. So these devices are smart, so they keep learning as it goes on.
The mere creation of Google is at least partly a consequence of funding from DARPA. In 1995, a joint grant from DARPA and the National Science Foundation funded the research of two graduate students, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, who would then go on to found Google. Grants also came from the CIA, the National Security Agency, or NSA. Today, Google has its own brain chip research program itself and would aim to upload information directly to the brain.
And then you had offered like it would be similar to Google in that it could start suggesting.
Exactly, yeah, hopefully. That's what our hope would be like. Yeah, most of the search engines and even like I think Facebook and everything is like that.
Suggesting, just like Facebook, the same internet giant that works closely with the US government to provide them with users' data. The company is another natural partner for DARPA. In 2016, the internet giant hired the former head of DARPA, Regina Dugan, who at the time was working at Google, to work on, as Mark Zuckerberg puts it, DARPA-style technological breakthroughs at Facebook. So it certainly looks like there's a bit of a revolving door between DARPA and the tech giants.
So this idea that we're going to put chips into people's brains that has algorithms similar to Google and Facebook that can begin to suggest and control the way people feel fundamentally terrifies me. Is this the moment in our society when we lose the connection to what it means to be a human?
As DARPA continue their endeavors in the realm of artificial intelligence, for some veterans, the neglect they have faced has pushed them to find other alternatives. Army veteran Ronnie Sadowski runs a program that trains veterans together with therapy dogs.
Started Wags for Tags in June 2011. Started it after my dog saved my life or stopped me from committing suicide in October 2010. So to date, we're at about 94 veterans. Last year, 2019, was our biggest year where we rescued 19 dogs to 19 veterans. And I say rescue 19 dogs to rescue 19 veterans.
But Ronnie recognizes that in and of itself, Wags for Tags isn't a solution, though it does help mitigate the effects of post-traumatic stress.
It has been proven that you could take a therapy dog. Now, a therapy dog is a dog that loves on everybody, okay? And you could take a therapy dog into the hospital, let patients rub the dog and everything, and their blood pressure will drop tremendously by petting this dog. Why is it? The dog brings comfort.
Robert is one of those who has benefited from Ronnie's program. After his wife found Wags for Tags on the internet when she realized his depression had spiraled out of control.
I've had a few incidences where I've had suicidal thoughts. I've stood on that ledge a few times, and I went to the hospital at one point in time, and that's when, I kind of realized I needed some help. I got Millie, and it's been a whirlwind. I won't say it makes everything go away, but, it makes things a little bit better,
Since Ronnie and Robert are both open to an alternative model of therapy, would either be inclined to try the brain chip?
You could tell me what it's going to do, but I would have to see it work. And then, too, if they're putting something in your brain, a chip, how can it screw up?
The whole AI thing, and that's a little weird for me. I'd rather take the pill. That's like, I don't know, Big Brother type stuff. If it can make it help you out, what else can they make,
For many, including myself, there's one clear element that the brain chip simply won't be able to understand.
I did things. I took part in things. I was complicit with things. I failed to do things that totally transgressed what I thought I would be, who I thought I would be, why I existed. All those reasons of that, all those things that made me, all those fundamental pillars of who I am were just ripped away because I had gone to war, taken part in this invasion and occupation, taken part in the killing. I was responsible for that. I'm the one who did it.
Who's down there? Whose brother, whose mother, whose grandmother is down there taking that hit? And what's that about? Why are we there? I didn't have that understanding then. Came from a family that was poor. I needed a job. There was mental health issues in my family, and I wanted to get out of that family. And I also wanted to serve my country. I felt it was the right thing to do.
According to Matthew, the concept of moral injury, committing acts that go against one's own set of principles and ethics, is key to understanding the crisis impacting the veteran community.
When you start to look at the number of combat-related suicide deaths, I think the answer is very clear that guilt or moral injury is what's behind those. For me, I remember the first time hearing that term, moral injury, it was about 7 or 8 years ago, and I remember thinking to myself, oh shit, that makes total sense. And because it's not PTSD why I want to kill myself, right? It's not because I can't sit with my back to the door. It's not because I get upset because fireworks go off, or I get tense when I'm driving because I think that piece of trash is a bomb on the side of the road. That's not why I want to kill myself.
So for me, it wasn't a one particular incident. It's just been, I feel the tears under that, and I welcome the tears. Spent a lot of time with meds, and I'm not on meds, so I'm regaining that ability to feel. I'm here, doing the best I can. But I wrestle with depression. Love to get out and get a fucking shotgun, blow my fucking head off. Be done with it. But I don't want to do that for my wife. Maybe some of the friends would miss me too.
So it wasn't the point until about 2020 when I said to myself, look, either put the fucking gun in your mouth and do it today, because in Virginia, all you need is a driver's license and you can go get a pistol the same day. Here in North Carolina, it's a little safer for us because you gotta at least have a pistol permit. Unless you wanna go to Walmart and try and get a shotgun or a rifle and figure out how you're gonna reach the trigger and have the barrel in your mouth.
The US government is clearly failing the veteran community. Rather than providing us with comprehensive medical care, it's turned its sights to the brain chips, which may look like a potential solution, but in reality doesn't address the underlying issues. Healing isn't on the government's agenda, but war making is. So it's no surprise that they would consider brain chips and super soldiers as a priority. The turn to artificial intelligence shows both the influence of tech giants and their connections to the US war machine. While scientists like Dr. Basu see little harm in their research and see the chips as offering genuine help to veterans, others are deeply concerned about the possible usage of such an invasive technology.
I think as long as it's not in healthy population, it's fine. Like if you're trying to help people with disorders who cannot function well, I think we are not trying to control the mind or the brain. We are just trying to nudge the brain slightly to bring it back to normal.
The high rates of suicidality with veterans, which in and of itself, if that's what is part of what led them to coming up with brain chips, I think that's more of a fear response on their part versus a really thoughtful process of, you know, what are we trying to do here?
The idea is hideous, it's monstrous, but certainly I can understand it from the Pentagon's perspective of like, good God, we could have soldiers that don't feel? We could deploy these guys all the time. Or we could deploy them and when they get back, we type a few things into the computer and it's like the old Men in Black movie, you know? They put the thing under, you know, the person's eyes and they don't, I mean, like, that would be fantastic for the Pentagon.